Victoria and David's commercial.
The best thing I've ever seen.
Best thing you've ever seen. Are they always that funny?
Yeah. They're hysterical. She's hysterical. They're both hysterical. But she is so funny, and that commercial killed me. I was like, they deserve an Oscar for that commercial.
What if I told you the most perfectly smiling family in pop culture history might be hiding the most perfectly silent war behind closed doors? What if the real drama in the Beckham household was never on camera, never in interviews, never in tabloids, but in the pauses between conversations, the looks across dinner tables, the things no one dared to say out loud? And what if the person who finally decided she was done staying quiet was the one everyone already blamed? Nicola Peltz. For years, the internet has been screaming the same question. Why did she cause a rift in the Beckham family? Why is Brooklyn distant? Why does Victoria look tense whenever her name comes up? But here's the twist nobody talks about. What if Nicola didn't break the family? What if she simply refused to play a role in it? Because this isn't just a story about a celebrity marriage. This is a story about what happens when love walks into a family that runs like a brand. A brand with rules. A brand with image. A brand where smiles are PR and silence is policy. And Nicola? She didn't get the memo. Imagine walking into a house where every photo on the wall looks like a magazine cover, but every conversation feels like a boardroom meeting. Where you're not being welcomed as a person, but evaluated as an addition to the legacy. Too dramatic? Then why did Brooklyn start looking like a man caught between two worlds? Why did wedding rumors explode before the vows were even done? Why did tabloids smell tension from 3,000 miles away, while the family kept posting filtered smiles? Coincidence? Or choreography? Because according to whispers from insiders, awkward interviews, body language experts on TikTok, and fans who analyze family photos like FBI agents, something has been off for a long time. And the scariest part? Nobody ever shouts.
What is that relationship like, just walking around the house with them? Are they just the best?
They're really the best people. And I'm so excited Victoria's here tonight, and it means the world to me. She made my outfit, she customized this beautiful look, and I'm just so happy to have her here tonight.
Nobody ever fights publicly. Nobody ever slips. Which makes the silence even louder. You see, in some families, drama is loud. In others, it's elegant, polite, controlled, deadly quiet. And Nicola? She walked straight into it thinking love would be enough. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. This is the story of dinners where words were chosen like legal statements. Wedding plans that felt less like celebration and more like negotiations. Phone calls that ended in silence so heavy it said more than arguments ever could. This is the story of a woman realizing she didn't just marry a man. She married a system, a legacy, an empire that doesn't bend easily for outsiders. And now, after years of rumors, icy glances, missed events, and headlines that never quite said it directly, Nicola is finally breaking her silence. Not with shouting, not with accusations, but with something far more dangerous. Truth told calmly. So the question isn't, did Nicola cause the rift? The real question is, what did she see inside the Beckham family that the world was never supposed to notice? And why does her version of the story make the perfect family image start to crack? Stay with me, because this isn't gossip. This is the kind of story where the loudest drama happens in whispers. The first time Nicola Peltz walked into the Beckham home, there were no cameras, no red carpets, no flashing lights, just polished floors, curated art, and a silence so refined it almost felt rehearsed. Brooklyn had whispered in the car, "Just be yourself." But his voice didn't sound confident. It sounded hopeful. And hope, in places like that, is usually a warning sign. David greeted her first. Warm smile, firm handshake, effortless charm. The kind of presence that makes you feel welcome without ever giving anything away. He asked about her flight, her projects, her family. Smooth, controlled, perfectly measured. Victoria, on the other hand, didn't greet. She observed, back straight, eyes sharp, a faint smile that stopped exactly where politeness ends. When Brooklyn said, "This is Nicola," Victoria replied, "We've heard a lot about you." A lot. Not so much. Not great things. Not we're excited to meet you. Just a lot. And that one word sat at the table longer than the food did. Dinner felt less like a family meal and more like an interview where no one told Nicola the questions beforehand. Conversations moved like scripted dialogue. Football, fashion, public image, schedule, legacy. Then came her turn. She spoke about acting, about wanting to build her own name, about being tired of being labeled the rich girl. She laughed lightly, trying to keep it human. Victoria didn't laugh. She didn't nod. She just held eye contact a second too long. And then, without shifting her expression, she turned to Brooklyn and asked, "How long do you plan to stay in the US?" Not how are you two doing? Not are you happy? Just logistics. Brooklyn paused before answering. And in that tiny pause, Nicola felt something shift. Because that hesitation didn't belong to a boyfriend. It belonged to a son calculating an answer. Later that night, back in their room, Brooklyn apologized. For what? She asked. He didn't say. And that silence said everything. Because in this family, not everything is spoken, but everything is understood. The next visits didn't get louder. They got heavier. There were no arguments. No open tension. Just small, precise moments that slowly built a quiet pressure. A comment here. A look there. Questions that sounded harmless but carried weight. Are you used to being watched all the time? David once asked casually over wine. Nicola smiled. I grew up in a known family too. But every house has its own rules. David nodded thoughtfully. Victoria gently placed her glass down so quietly, the sound cut through the air like a signal. Rules. That word lingered. By the end of 2019, one question from Victoria changed everything. She looked Nicola directly in the eyes and asked, "Do you think you're ready for this life?" She didn't mean marriage. She meant this. The image. The expectations. The invisible structure. Nicola answered honestly. I love Brooklyn. Victoria smiled. But the smile never reached her eyes. On the drive home, Brooklyn said, "She's just protective." Nicola nodded. But inside, a thought had already formed. If a mother guards her son this tightly, where does that leave the woman who loves him next? Fast forward to early wedding planning. What should have been excitement started feeling like negotiations. The dress, the venue, the guest list, the traditions. Every decision felt like it had history attached to it. Expectations attached to it. Unspoken approval attached to it. 3 days before the wedding, in a bright fitting room in Palm Beach, Nicola stood staring at her Valentino gown. Brooklyn sat nearby, scrolling through his phone. Then the door opened. Victoria walked in with her assistant. Calm, elegant, composed. Her eyes scanned the dress. Then Nicola. Are you sure about this choice? She asked softly. Softly, but sharp enough to slice through the air. Nicola didn't hesitate. I've already made my choice. The room changed temperature. Brooklyn looked up. Victoria added, still sweetly, that day is very important. There are traditions. Nicola heard the part that wasn't said. Not your traditions. She replied, steady. This is Brooklyn's and my wedding day. Brooklyn stepped in quickly. Mom, we agreed on this. Victoria turned to him calmly. I'm speaking with Nicola. No raised voices. But the power lines had been drawn. That night at dinner, Nicola mentioned wanting the first dance to be private. Just her and Brooklyn. David nodded approvingly. Victoria set her knife down. Family is always at the heart of moments like this. Nicola met her gaze. I agree. But my family starts with Brooklyn. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. Final. Brooklyn stared at his plate. David sipped his wine slowly. And Nicola realized she had just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. By the rehearsal, tension wasn't hidden anymore. It was visible in the air. When the band asked about the dance order, Victoria walked onto the stage to take control. Nicola called out from below, "This part is for Brooklyn and me." Victoria turned. We're just trying to make everything perfect. Nicola replied, "Perfect for who?" The room froze. That night, Nicola and Brooklyn had their first real fight. Not about the dress. Not about the dance. About him staying quiet when she needed him loud. He said he felt stuck in the middle. She said she refused to be his battleground. And his silence after that hurt more than any argument. Because silence had become the loudest voice in their relationship. The next morning, the wedding smiles looked flawless. But underneath the makeup, something had already cracked. After the wedding lights faded and the last guests flew home, something strange followed Nicola and Brooklyn to Los Angeles. Not joy. Not relief. But a weight that felt invisible and constant, like someone else had moved into their marriage without asking. At first, Brooklyn tried to act normal. He cooked, played music, talked about future plans, laughed a little louder than usual, like he was trying to convince both of them that everything was fine. But Nicola started noticing the small things. His phone never stopped buzzing. Calls from London at odd hours. Messages he read quickly and replied to even faster. Sometimes he'd step out mid-conversation to take a call, returning quiet, distant, and emotionally somewhere else. "What happened?" she would ask. "Nothing important," he'd say. But if it was nothing, why did it change his entire mood? Their arguments didn't begin with shouting. They started with questions. Can we decide where we live without checking with anyone? Can we plan our schedule without worrying who it upsets? Can we just live? Brooklyn's answers were always the same. They are just worried about me. And Nicola began to wonder when worry quietly turns into control. She didn't feel hated. She didn't feel attacked. She felt managed, like an addition to a structure that already had a design. And she was expected to fit into it without changing anything. The more she tried to be understanding, the more she felt herself shrinking. Family video calls became performances. She chose her words carefully, adjusted her tone, smiled at the right moments, stayed quiet at the wrong ones. One day she realized something that terrified her. Peace in her marriage meant becoming smaller. The first major fight came at the end of 2022. Brooklyn mentioned a trip to London. "I'll go for a few days," he said casually. Nicola asked, "Why can't I come?" He hesitated. "It's a family matter." That phrase echoed in her head long after he left the room. Family matter. As if she wasn't part of it. She started questioning herself. Maybe she didn't understand their way of life. Maybe she was being too sensitive. Maybe this was just how powerful families functioned. So she tried stepping back, being softer, quieter. But with every compromise, she felt herself fading. Then came the comments. Small jokes on family calls. Casual lines that sounded harmless but landed heavy. "The Beckham kid has to grow up the right way." Everyone laughed. Except Nicola. She looked at Brooklyn. He looked away. And that's when a brutal realization hit her. She wasn't being treated like Brooklyn's partner. She was being treated like a potential disruption to the dynasty. By early 2023, the distance wasn't just emotional. It became visible. Brooklyn started skipping certain family events. No announcements. No drama. Just excuses. Busy. Next time. Can't make it. Tabloids started whispering about a rift. But those headlines weren't creating problems. They were describing them. In March 2023, they flew to London for a family gathering. The moment they entered the house, Nicola felt it again. That same refined silence. Victoria greeted her politely. David shook Brooklyn's hand with calm firmness. Dinner conversations stayed light. Too light. Work. Travel. Public appearances. Then Nicola mentioned wanting to plan more time independently in LA. Victoria looked straight at her and said, "Sharper this time. When my son shows up, he represents more than himself." Nicola didn't look away. "And when your son got married," she replied calmly, "he stopped belonging only to his old family." The room went still. David tried to ease the moment. "These are sensitive topics." But it was too late. The truth had slipped into the open. After dinner, Brooklyn spoke to his parents behind a half-closed door. No shouting. Just firm voices. When he came out, he looked drained. "I can't please everyone," he said. Nicola replied quietly, "I don't need you to please anyone. I need you to stand with me." His silence felt heavier than ever. By summer, the tension had turned public. Brooklyn missed key family moments. Photos circulated online without him. Articles speculated about distance and division. And for the first time, Nicola wasn't afraid of the rumors. Because they were simply reflecting what she had been living. One night in Los Angeles, their argument lasted for hours. Nicola said she couldn't keep proving she wasn't a threat. Brooklyn said he couldn't turn his back on his parents. She asked, "Then where does that leave me?" He whispered, "I'm trying." But trying without choosing was no longer enough. Their home started feeling like neutral ground in a war neither of them wanted. Brooklyn looked exhausted. Not angry. Not defensive. Just tired. Tired of choosing words carefully. Tired of being pulled in two directions. Tired of feeling like no matter what he did, someone he loved would be hurt. And Nicola began to see something clearly. There were no villains here. Just a system too strong to bend, and a marriage too fragile to carry its weight. By the end of 2023, the cracks were impossible to hide. A major family event happened in London. Brooklyn didn't go. No excuses this time. Just silence. The headlines exploded the next day. Family rift. Brooklyn distances himself. Nicola blamed. But Nicola didn't feel angry. She felt done. Because the blame had become predictable. Later that night, Brooklyn received a long call from London. When he hung up, he said quietly, "They think you're pulling me away." Nicola looked at him and asked the only question that mattered. "What do you think?" He didn't answer immediately. And that pause hurt more than any accusation ever could. By early 2024, the tension had stopped pretending to be invisible. It was there. In the room. In the pauses. In the way Brooklyn looked at his phone before picking it up, like he already knew the emotional cost of whatever was waiting on the other side. Then one morning, a short call came from David. No small talk. No warmth. No pretending. "We need to talk. All of us." That was it. Brooklyn didn't argue. Didn't ask questions. He just nodded slowly, like a man who had been expecting this moment for months. The meeting happened in a quiet Beverly Hills house. No assistants. No cameras. No public smiles. Just 4 people sitting in a living room that felt heavier than any courtroom. David. Calm. Hands clasped. Measured voice. Victoria. Upright. Composed. Eyes fixed, sharp and unreadable. Brooklyn. In the middle. Physically and emotionally. Nicola. Still. Steady. Done staying quiet. David spoke first. About family. About years of building something that required discipline, image, sacrifice. About protecting their children from outside pressures. Nicola listened carefully. Then she spoke. "I understand protection," she said calmly. "But protecting someone shouldn't mean erasing someone else." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly. "No one has taken anything from you." Nicola held her gaze. "Then why do I always feel like I have to ask permission when it comes to decisions about my own husband?" The room froze. Brooklyn inhaled deeply. And for the first time in a long time, he spoke before anyone else could. "Mom," he said, voice tight, "I'm 26 years old." Victoria turned to him without hesitation. "I know. But you're still my son." Brooklyn swallowed hard. "And I'm Nicola's husband." Silence. The kind that lands like a shockwave without making a sound. That sentence cost him something. Everyone in the room felt it. The conversation stretched for hours. No shouting. Just truth, finally spoken without filters. Nicola talked about the dinners she felt excluded from. The trips she didn't know about. The constant feeling of being treated like an outsider inside her own marriage. Victoria pushed back. She said she only wanted to keep the family close. Nicola asked quietly, "Close how, if everyone who joins has to shrink to fit in?" David tried to mediate. "We all love Brooklyn." Nicola nodded. "I know. But love also needs boundaries." For the first time, Victoria didn't respond immediately. Her voice, when it came, was softer but edged with pride. "You don't understand what this family gave up to get here." Nicola replied, "I'm not here to tear it down. I'm here to build my place in it." Those words hung in the air like a line that couldn't be erased. Finally, Brooklyn stood up. No apologies. No softening. "I love both sides," he said. "But I can't keep living like my marriage needs approval." David looked at him quietly. "You know there will be consequences." Brooklyn nodded. "I know." They left that house in silence. In the car, Brooklyn whispered, "I don't know where this is going." Nicola squeezed his hand. "I just need to know where you stand." His grip tightened, but fear still lived inside it. The weeks after that meeting were the hardest. His family went quiet. The media got louder. And Brooklyn, he shut down. Nicola could see the weight of what he had done. The cost of finally choosing to speak. He wasn't relieved. He was grieving. Grieving the idea that maybe both worlds could never peacefully exist together. In April, another major family event happened in London. Brooklyn didn't go. No drama. No statements. Just, "I'm not ready." Nicola didn't celebrate. She understood. Every step forward for them meant something breaking behind them. One night, they sat on the floor in their LA home. No lights on. Just the glow from the street outside. Brooklyn whispered, "I'm scared of disappointing you." Nicola replied softly. I'm scared of losing you. They both laughed quietly. Not because it was funny. Because they were exhausted. That's when Nicola realized something important. There were no villains in this story. Just love trapped inside a system too rigid to bend. From that point on, something shifted. She stopped trying to win. He stopped apologizing for things he didn't control. They stopped performing peace and started protecting it. Life in LA became intentionally simple. Morning coffee, quiet walks, normal conversations that didn't feel like they were being overheard by history. Brooklyn started rediscovering himself. Cooking more, creating more, doing things without asking for approval. Nicola stopped explaining herself to the internet. Stopped reading comments that turned her into either a villain or a victim. Because neither was true. The relationship with his family didn't magically heal. It became distant, careful, respectful from afar. Boundaries replaced forced closeness. And strangely, those boundaries upset people more than arguments ever did. Because boundaries mean you're no longer easy to control. Brooklyn still loved his brothers. They still spoke. The connection wasn't destroyed. But the pressure to perform unity had disappeared. Nicola stayed especially gentle when it came to Harper. She never wanted a child to feel like sides existed. Because children shouldn't inherit adult tension. One evening, after a long quiet day, Nicola told Brooklyn something she would never forget. I'm not asking you to walk away from anyone. I just don't want you to walk away from yourself. That became their real vow. Not the one spoken at the wedding. The one built after surviving it. Their happiness now didn't look like fairy tales. It looked like peace. Messy kitchen counters. Lazy mornings. Silence that felt safe instead of heavy. Brooklyn would sometimes look at her and ask softly, "You okay today?" And that simple question meant more than grand gestures ever could. Because for the first time, neither of them felt like they were living inside someone else's expectations. Nicola no longer felt like she had to shrink to keep the peace. Brooklyn no longer felt like he had to split himself in two to keep everyone happy. They chose quiet. Not out of fear, but to protect what was real. And Nicola finally understood something she wished she had known from the beginning. You can sacrifice for love, but you cannot disappear for it. Because when you lose your voice, love starts suffocating too. Now, when people ask her if she's happy, she doesn't talk about headlines or rumors. She just says, "We can breathe." And sometimes, after everything they went through, breathing is the biggest victory of all. So now the real question isn't what happened behind those closed doors. The real question is, why did it take this long for anyone to say it out loud? Because if you really think about it, this story was never about one dinner, one wedding, one awkward family moment, or one viral headline. It was about control, image, silence, and the quiet pressure that comes when you marry into a brand instead of a family. And suddenly, all those perfect family photos start looking a little different, don't they? All those red carpet smiles, all those birthday posts, all those public displays of unity. You start wondering, how much of it was real, and how much of it was rehearsed? Because here's the uncomfortable part nobody wants to admit. When someone breaks their silence, it means there was a silence to begin with. And silence doesn't happen by accident. It's built, maintained, protected. So ask yourself, how many other stories are still sitting behind those polished Instagram posts? How many other people are smiling in photos while shrinking in real life? And how many times have we, as an audience, applauded the image without questioning the cost of maintaining it? This wasn't just Nicola's story. This is the story of what happens when a person refuses to quietly disappear inside someone else's legacy. When love stops being about fitting in and starts being about standing your ground. And maybe that's why this hit so hard. Because deep down, everyone recognizes this feeling. That moment when you realize peace is more important than approval. That moment when you stop asking, how do I make them comfortable? And start asking, why am I uncomfortable? So now we leave you with this. Was Nicola the villain people painted her to be? Or was she simply the first person brave enough to say, this doesn't feel right? Was Brooklyn torn between two worlds? Or was he finally choosing the one where he could breathe? And what does it say about a family when boundaries feel more shocking than arguments? We want to know what you think. Do you believe this was a power struggle? A misunderstanding blown out of proportion? Or a long-hidden tension that was bound to explode one day? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is far from over. If stories like this fascinate you, the untold sides, the uncomfortable truths, the drama nobody wants to admit publicly, make sure you hit like, Make sure you subscribe, because we're just getting started uncovering what's really happening behind the world's most perfect headlines. And remember, sometimes the loudest stories are the ones that were forced to stay quiet for the longest time.